You're watching the Fantasy Football Bros podcast, the show that'll keep you from coming in last. Now, here's your hosts.
Hi, it's been a while. Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Bros podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy, and I'm joined today again by the wonderful and talented Nick and JD. We're just going to kind of finish off our division by division, team by team discussion of players to watch for in your fantasy drafts. The season's coming soon, all right? And we're not here to leave you hanging. We're here to help you, take you to the promised land, hopefully get you that championship. So let's just dive right into it. We don't need to waste any time here. Let's dive into, we're going to talk about the AFC South now. And we're going to talk about the Texans, and JD's going to lead us off. JD, what do you have to say about the Texans?
Here, let me get my mic up for this. Don't get any. Their team is horrible. So that being said, Deshaun Watson probably isn't going to ever play another snap for them again, which leaves Tyrod Taylor as their starter. Do not trust Tyrod Taylor. He has been kind of a journeyman quarterback for the last couple of years. I think he was on the Chargers last year before Herbie took over. And Herbie just absolutely, blew it out the water last year. But that being said, I mean, I don't have any trust that Tyrod Taylor is going to play that well on a Houston Texans team that Deshaun Watson was he was good last year, but Deshaun Watson is a great quarterback playing on a horrible team, and he looked average last year stat-wise. He was still a great quarterback. If you watch, you could tell the talent that he has. Unfortunately, we'll leave out his other things he does off the field, but that's not even important. Who knows if he'll even be relevant this year in fantasy. Running back wise, they picked up Mark Ingram. We all know kind of what happened with him last year. I think he was like a fourth rounder last year in the fantasy, and I mean he got beat out by JK. It was JK, wasn't it?
Yeah, but he wasn't even seeing the field.
Really?
He was Gus Edwards was their north-south guy, and J.K. Dobbins was, their pass catcher and stuff like that.
Yeah, so they're on the menu.
Yeah, but then they have David Johnson as their second running back, Philip Lindsay as their third. I mean, their running back, they have decent running backs, but when you have that many decent running backs, it's almost like who do you even go with? They're going to have a 1A, 1C type running back committee right there. The only one, and we've been talking about it a little bit, the only one that I would consider would be a good one would be Brandon Cooks. And he's someone that Jimmy and I and Nick were talking about before we went live. He would be a flex if he has a good matchup that week, you might consider starting him. I think week 1, does he go up against Jacksonville, is it?
Yeah.
So he could be a good week 1 flex, depending on what type of league you run. But he would be like a good wide receiver 3, maybe low wide receiver 2 type for that first week at least. Besides that, I mean, then you go to the second wide receiver, Chris Conley, and I don't want any of that. I mean, Tyrod Taylor isn't going to be throwing the ball to all these different wide receivers that much,
And we don't want his lung punctured.
There's
again.
Yeah, exactly. And then besides that, I'm looking at their team, and I just don't want any part of it. They have Jordan Atkins at tight end. Don't want that. Their third wide receiver, Anthony Miller. Don't really want that. He's questionable right now too. And so they just don't really have anyone besides Brandon Cooks on a good matchup week that I would consider probably drafting, to be honest with you, at all.
Right. Nick, what are your thoughts on the Texans?
I'm not excited. I'm with JD. I don't want any part of that, honestly. It's like if Deshaun Watson plays, then I think it's a different scenario. Like I take Brandon Cooks and probably Deshaun Watson, but no. Yeah. Sorry, Houston.
Yeah, there's no happy ending for Houston this time. My thoughts are I'm hearing that Mark Ingram though is taking the number 1 spot. Who knows if that's to be believed? I think David Johnson's kind of on the downfall. They also got Philip Lindsay now, so I don't know. Like maybe stow him on your bench, but that's it. That's the best I could say about the Texans. All right, so let's move on to the Colts now. Nick, you want to take the Colts?
Yeah. The Colts are definitely an interesting team. I think that they have an interesting running back scenario where it's like they have three very valuable running backs and on their team. I wouldn't say they are for fantasy wise. I mean, I guess Jonathan Taylor, excuse me, is probably who I would definitely target. But I mean, even with Marlon Mack returning, they re-signed him, and even like we saw Naheem Hines just take some touches away from Jonathan Taylor. So obviously, all of that's concerning if I'm a Jonathan Taylor fantasy owner. I do like their offense, though. I mean, with a good offensive line that like they do have, I'm excited about the running backs. But it's like at the same time, if we're not sure who's going to be the running back is, like I'm not like all gung ho about Jonathan Taylor. I think he's the best running back on that team. I just think that they're just going to go a committee approach like they did last year. Carson Wentz. I mean, he's going to make that offense better. I think that he got a raw deal with the Eagles, and he wasn't very good. But I think also like the play calling was really bad with the Eagles last year. So, and he's very comfortable with Frank Wright. So we'll see what that is. I really don't know. I mean, he obviously they won the Super Bowl with Frank Wright, and Frank Wright got the best out of Carson Wentz. So I mean, he could be someone that's like a streamer. But I think with the better offensive line, we'll see Wentz do better. In terms of like their receivers, their pass catchers, I think the big person that I'm real interested in is Michael Pittman, and it's just because he's tall, he's a good, he's a USC guy. No, but he's a good pass catcher, and we'll see if he takes a step forward. I mean, last year he had some good games, but then also exactly. The first half of the year he was injured, and after that he had a couple good games, and a lot of people were hyped about him. But it all depends on whether he can take a step forward for me, and I don't know if he will. But I mean, he's someone that definitely to keep an eye on, and I think that's going to be Wentz's probably number one guy, him and T.Y. Hilton, because T.Y. Hilton was definitely really good, especially against the Houston Texans. I don't know if you guys remember, but he just like goes off on them. So I think I like that they're pass catchers. I think it's definitely going to be better. I would definitely take a risk on T.Y. Hilton, Zach Pascal maybe, and on if you're like in a 12-person league. But I think a lot of people, they're like, I don't know. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like at this point,
Hilton's hurt right now, so that makes
So I was gonna say
Pascal didn't get dropped or something.
I was gonna say just to give the Colt fans that might be watching this some worry. T.Y. Hilton is out with an unspecified neck injury.
Surgery, I think.
Shout out to he had surgery for it. Shout out to that's exactly what happened at the end of career for Peyton Manning with the Colts.
Right.
So I'm sure that gives them a little bit of worry that another one of their players is now out with a neck injury. But yeah, he's out for a number of weeks at least right now.
Yeah. What I have to chime in, I'll chime in here about them with the running back situation because it was a Jonathan Taylor guy last year. I think Jonathan Taylor had a somewhat similar season to a guy by the name of Josh Jacobs last year, where at the end of the year you look at his numbers and go, he did that well for me? Where it's like you didn't feel that week in and week out, those numbers, but at the end he took off. And we do have to remember that he took off against teams that were kind of weak. But Jonathan Taylor has the talent to be a top 5 RB. Now, the problem is, I don't think they're going to give it to him at the Colts. I think they brought Marlon Mack back. They have Hines. Last year, at one point, we were talking about Jordan Wilkins being like relevant for fantasy. And that was like because they just would rotate running back so much. You're like, why are they doing this? I think that's just kind of the offensive strategy they have. I don't think he's a high first round pick, Jonathan Taylor, but I think he's a like end of round 1, where he's kind of going. I think if you take him like in like the early second round, you're not going to regret it. But at the same time, just be aware that backfield could be potentially crowded.
It's a circus.
It's a circus back there.
Yeah.
I'm really high on Pittman. I'm really high on Wentz. I think Wentz is going to have a bounce back year. That offensive line is just an awesome. I'll just comment real quick. Their defense is awesome. To get their defense for your fantasy team. And also Blankenship. Ride it to victory. Ride that Blankenship to victory.
Yeah.
The goggles, baby. Put your goggles on and strap in. Riding the Blankenship. JD, you're as a current Jonathan Taylor holder, you have anything to say real quick?
Yeah, I mean, just what I was going to say real quick. Couple things I like to poke fun. The Colts, I'm sure, are kicking themselves for not building this type of offensive line just a couple of years earlier and keeping arguably gonna be an MVP caliber quarterback. But instead he had to early retire because of the constant injuries
What
and him
rotten
running
luck.
for his life. Yeah, yeah. What rotten
dropping
luck.
Dropping
Yeah.
the puns today. Wow, breaking the
This
fire.
dad shirt. dude.
So what I'll say is, in what we play, which is half PPR. I don't know for everyone,
Yeah.
but for half PPR, Jonathan Taylor's ADP is he's going around the 12th to 13th pick. That's kind of where he's at. So if you're playing a 12-man league, he's kind of that last pick of the first round. If you're playing 10-man like we are, he's like early second round. Some people could go up first round because right now you have Devontae, Kelsey, and Tyreek Hill in front of him. So depending on if what league it is and if they decide to go running back heavy, he could go bottom of the first, early second. He does worry me, like we said. I can't understand the Colts' decision in keeping Marlon Mack.
No reason.
It seems like you have these other running backs already now. You have this rookie running back. You have Hines backing him up. Like, it made little sense. So it does definitely worry me because, why would they want to keep that and then still also go and call him the starter? So we'll see how the season goes. But the one thing I will say, the upside is they have probably a top 5 to 3 offensive line type if they can stay healthy and all that. Their offensive line is really good, I think. Definitely has a lot of upside in my opinion. Wide receiver, I'm a big Pittman believer as USC. I in fact picked him up in our draft this year, and especially with Hilton now being out for an unspecified amount of weeks, and their backup is on COVID right now, COVID watch. Out with Wentz on COVID watch, but they're both on COVID right now. So if hopefully they can come back from COVID before the start of the season. I'm sure they will. But it all points in the direction of Pittman should kind of start taking over as the number 1 wide receiver on this team. And he's going really late. I think he's like I think I got him in like the 13th round or something like that. So he's a late rounder that has potential really good upside.
Wide receiver on his team, so.
Last year I got CeeDee Lamb in the 13th round. Now it didn't work out because Dak ended up getting injured, but he showed his upside still. And so I think I don't know if he'll have quite the season or the upside that CeeDee Lamb, but you can still definitely look at these late rounds and get some great wide receivers that are still young and unproven at the moment.
Yeah. All right. So we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, so I'm going to send over the Jags to Nick while I try to deal with these.
Yeah, the Jaguars are an interesting team because they're obviously in rebuild mode, right? They just got Trevor Lawrence, who in the preseason looked really sharp. I think the big thing was the injury to Travis Etienne. That's huge for James Robinson. I think that obviously, JD in our keeper league just made that decision. Just if we were able to push the draft back a little bit later, he may have had a couple different.
It was keepers. The next day after the keepers were supposed to be locked in.
Yeah, so that's really significant for James Robinson because James Robinson was like, I want to say running back 2 or running back 3 on the year last year, and that was just because he just got that volume. And obviously with like a new coach, that's to be determined on whether James Robinson is going to still have the same workload that he did last year. I tend to believe that he's not because. Speaking with some of the boys last at our draft, we were talking about how Urban Meyer kind of likes the idea of having a committee type, and he's got Carlos Hyde, who they also signed, who also was pretty good for the Seahawks for what they asked him to do. So I definitely believe in James Robinson. I definitely believe he's got that ability to score touchdowns and catch the ball and stuff. But I believe also that they're going to go into the direction of a committee a little bit more. That shouldn't dissuade you for getting James Robinson. I still big believer in him. So I think that the Jaguars are going to be a better offense this year. Not that they were horrible last year. I mean, they were just okay with Gardner Minshew. And I think they even had another quarterback. I can't remember who was it that stepped in, and even them, he had some success. But I mean, in terms of their pass catchers too, I think I'm hearing like a lot about Chenault taking a step forward this year. I hear that I saw that he did pretty well in the preseason. I think also someone to look at that I really liked is DJ Chark, and I know he had a drop issue last year. But I still believe he has the talent. I think that Urban Meyer really challenged him during the preseason to take a step forward, and that's obviously to be determined. But I think everyone's going to have better numbers than they did last year because of Trevor Lawrence. I think, we can safely say that the Lawrence effect. So I'm definitely a believer that the Jags are going to be better. I don't know if they're going to be, like, I don't know, just like an amazing offense, but I definitely think that they'll have a better fantasy value.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. We know Trevor Lawrence was drafted to be like this generational talent, and he's drafted to like kind of be this next big star of football. And so I have little faith. I feel like even though I have very little, I feel like NFL experience, I feel like Urban Meyer is someone who might get in the way of a lot of the Jaguars' success because I think he might bring too much college into the NFL, and we've seen in the past what that's done. Like when people learn from it. Like I think Pete Carroll came in, did bad, left, and came back later. He you have to grow. So we'll see. He's bringing his old ways because it's a completely different ball game. So
yeah, it's a different beast. Absolutely.
So to what Jimmy was kind of saying though. In Pete Carroll's case, he was always an NFL coach until he went to USC.
Interesting.
And then when he left USC, he proved himself to be an NFL coach. Just saying that, like, it can work the opposite way too, necessarily.
So
I don't think Jimmy's saying that he wasn't an NFL coach, but we saw that he didn't have success in the NFL. Then he ended up finding himself in the college. But I think the NFL and college is completely different. But I mean, we'll see.
Like Nick Saban happened with. But yeah.
Well, so it's funny with both. I don't want to go too much into it because I'm a very big, as you guys can see, college football fan as well. You see one season of Pete Carroll with the Jets where he went like 7-9, and then they replaced him, and the replacement did even worse than him. And then in Saban's case, I mean, Saban left after 3 games with the Dolphins or something like that. In the middle of the season, he ran away. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, each to their own. To what I will say, I've been hearing a lot of Jaguars are complaining about his coaching style right now. A lot of them, they're saying anonymous, but I'm hearing a lot of them are not happy with the way he's coaching, and they don't think they're going to be set up for success. I don't think, like you guys are saying, I don't think that should affect maybe some of their placement. I mean, we'll see how Lawrence does his rookie season. I am going to be hard-pressed to believe that he'll do a lot better than what they would have had even with Minshew.
Yeah.
Just as a rookie, learning the league, I don't think he's going to be like first season come out and be MVP type quality. I mean, you even saw it with Peyton. His first year, he threw a then rookie record interceptions, and he ends up being, a machine at quarterback and all that. So, yeah, I don't think that the first season will show him to be great, but I think he definitely, I mean, clearly there hasn't been as much hype for a quarterback since probably Andrew Luck coming out of college. I mean, where it's been this obvious that years in advance, this guy's going number 1 overall. I remember watching. Yeah. I remember watching Andrew Luck back in college, and it was just like he could have left 2 years earlier, and he still would have been the first overall pick. They were just that hyped about him. It was the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. He had that freshman season with Clemson, and everyone was already talking that he's the first overall. And I mean, clearly he did nothing to deter anyone from feeling that way. When you go to running back, James Robinson definitely is going to be a little bit of a question mark just because of Carlos Hyde and the new head coach. You got to feel a little bit better if you're a James Robinson owner or if you're going to pick him up just because, they're the first round running back is going to be out for the whole season, so he has less competition in the backfield of like having those split touches. And so that only helps when you get a Jaguars running back. And we saw, even though Jaguars don't really have the best line, you still saw James Robinson average like 4 or 5 yards a carry last season. So he's proven himself. He had like maybe 1 or 2 rushes for over 20 yards last season. So he's not going to get you a bulk all in one. He's just kind of that consistent, get you 20, 25 touches. Like Jimmy was saying with I think we were talking about it a little bit with Jonathan Taylor, but I also see him as a Josh Jacob type running back. He's going to get you a lot of touches and average size numbers, but he's still going to get those touches and he's still going to get those numbers.
Yeah, he's definitely interesting.
He's going in the third round or late second, depending on what type of. Yeah, he's going 32nd is what they have him in a half PPR league, and so. We'll see. The one thing I'll say is, he's not really like Carlos Hyde is great. Carlos Hyde was great a couple years ago. So, he's not. I feel like he's going to be more. Carlos Hyde's going to be more their third down running back, and James Robinson's going to be the guy who does the hard running and gets.
That's the great thing about fantasy and this football is like we all have like conceived ideas of what's going to happen, and it's like you get to see what happens next week. Really,
My last comment basically on the Jaguars is I think you could draft any of their receivers and one of them is going to probably hit. One or two of them are probably going to hit. My money, if I was going to bet on someone to hit, it'd be Marvin Jones because he's the safest. I feel like because we've seen him hit. So, I mean, it's an easy one, but I just think, like, if you're drafting any of them, if you want the safest Jag, it's Marvin Jones. But, yeah. And back to the Urban Meyer thing real quick, just to finish it off, is what would I mean for, like, these college guys? I think we see with Saban and all them is that they don't get the recruiting that they get. They're in the big boy league where they get what they get, and they got to be happy with it. So it's like they can't just keep going around the country being like, oh, I'm taking this person. And they have to adjust to that. So it's like it's kind of a crappy adjustment. It's almost better to be in college, as a coach, because you get that. But but that's kind of like where my point is with that.
Yeah, I know that also to add on what you said, I know they whiffed in free agency because Urban Meyer wanted to meet with them, and obviously, they're like, yeah, sorry, the window strikes fast and hard. So
yeah, it happened. It's all an adjustment period. He has the potential to be. He's an amazing college coach, so he can translate over. But there's always an adjustment period. But all right, so I'll take the Titans now, and this is just a fantasy rich team to me. I think. First off, Tannehill, totally underrated. I think if you take Ryan Tannehill, if you wait and you take a quarterback and you take Tannehill, you are a little bit ahead of a lot of people because you use those other picks that everyone's picking quarterbacks to get receivers and running backs as late round guys or even a tight end like a Pitts or whatever. I have a lot of faith in Tannehill. I want to say he was like the 7th ranked QB last year. The guy and now he has Julio Jones as a weapon. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones as weapons. Now, we always have to remember that this is a run-first team. So, Derrick Henry, oh my gosh. There's not even much that needs to be said about Derrick Henry. Draft him. Wherever he's going, draft him. The guy's a beast. The guy's awesome. Who cares that he doesn't catch the ball? He'll run and make up for it. So it's like, it's Derrick Henry are good, locked in. So if we want to talk about guys that maybe, like Julio Jones, I think draft him. I have a lot of faith in Julio. I feel like the fantasy world is very like Hollywood. What have you done for me lately? And people get too much like, Julio was so bad last year. Let's just throw him away. It's like, whoa. The last 2 years, Julio was an early second-round pick, I want to say. An early second-round pick. And now he's on a team with arguably a better quarterback because Matt Ryan is on the fall. Like Matt Ryan, overall his career, of course, is a better quarterback. But I'm saying like now it might be a stronger quarterback, a stronger offense, another receiver. Well, he had Calvin Ridley, but he has A.J. Brown still to back him up. The run game will open up the field. I think this is just a powerhouse offense, and you want part of this Titans offense because they will be, here's another pun, Titans in this fantasy world. So, but yeah, and just a real comment on real quick. They lost Jonnu Smith, but I think that guy's Anthony Ferkser is their tight end. He was fantasy relevant a few weeks, and Jonnu was very fantasy relevant, but then they kind of ate each other. So now that it's just Ferkser, he might be an option to store away, but I wouldn't necessarily say start him because I think there's a lot of options you could start week 1 in front of him, but he's someone to watch. So what say you guys?
Yeah, I can agree more with you. I mean, really the Titans are a really exciting team. And top to bottom, they have such a good team on the offensive side. I mean, even their offensive line is so underrated and so good. And you just think about that. That the offensive line, we always talk about how it just flies under the radar because that gives your quarterback time to throw, that gives your running backs to run through. And obviously when your quarterback has time to throw, he's going to hit those receivers and they have time to get open. And then when those holes are open, their running back has a chance to get level and really run over someone like Derrick Henry does. And we saw that stiff arm against Josh Norman last year, and that was disrespectful. I remember seeing that, and he's a beast. But I mean, I just want to quickly add something to what Jimmy said about Derrick Henry, which I didn't know. I do have him this year because one of our friends, thank you, Kyle, if you're watching, thank you, didn't return him to his team. I think he was trying to sneak him in the first round, but I ended up snagging him. And one thing I didn't realize, what Jimmy brought up to my attention, is Derrick Henry starts out slow. Derrick Henry will not be get you those big numbers that you're accustomed to seeing in Derrick Henry, and it's going to be a slow grind for you for a little bit. But just you're dealing with what Jimmy told me he called the Yeti.
Yeah, that's what they said in the one podcast. The other one I listened to, like as it gets colder, the Yeti comes out. As it gets more to winter. JD, what about you? What are your thoughts on the Titans?
So I'm gonna be a little bit different than you, Jimmy. At least, I don't want part of their passing offense. I think you have two, in your words, Titans at wide receiver. I don't know which one you trust more. Julio Jones has always been a number one wide receiver, and he's going to a team where I think he's now technically, you can say it's 1A, 1B, but he's technically going to be listed as their second wide receiver. Does that mean he gets the lesser of the cornerbacks on him, and he's going to have better matchups? It very well could be, and then he could start off. But I mean, if you look at the top, I think it's even top 10 to 15 teams last season for offensive ranking. I think they had like third most. They were the third best team on offense or something like that, like really high offense. But that's behind 2,000 yards rushing of a Derrick Henry. Their passing is the worst out of those 10 to 15 teams. The worst when you're talking about yards. And so there's only so much ball that can go around. And when you have a titan at running back like Derrick Henry, he's going to demand the ball. And I mean their defenses can be questionable, but I mean if they jump out to a decent enough lead, they're just going to keep running the ball, and they have that workhorse at running back that just, I can't even remember the last time he's missed probably more than a game or two all season. He's not someone that's going to really go injured, and I think they're just going to still run the ball on him, and I think that's what's made Tannehill such a decent quarterback over the past a little bit, is I would look good at quarterback on that team if I had Derrick Henry running 2,000 yards for me. I mean, maybe not that, but I mean, when you have A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and Derrick Henry, the ball can only get to so many people. And besides Derrick Henry, everyone else scares me because you could make an argument that Julio Jones now takes over the offense and A.J. Brown gets no touches. You could say the opposite, or they split, and who knows if split's going to be good for either of them. So it's just one of those that, like, because they don't have a clear best wide receiver, even though I think they can be really good together, because they don't have a clear number one wide receiver, I don't know who's going to get the majority of the touches. So you could start one and one gets 2 catches that whole game while the other one's going to get 10 or 12. And they're going to be fine. Maybe they'll be fine with that, or maybe, but maybe they both go off. But this last season alone, I mean, Ryan Tannehill threw 3,800 yards. I mean, you're talking, that's not that great for, I mean, he can be a good quarterback, but 3,800, that's not that much that the ball's kind of getting passed around when you think about it. You have other teams that are throwing close to almost 5,000 last season, and then he is at 3,800.
All right, well, we'll have to see, but maybe we'll have to make some sort of bet on this.
Yeah.
You bring up good points.
Hot take.
Yeah, good points.
Yeah. So hot take, I mean, And I could be very wrong because I mean they added a new wide receiver, so that usually can only mean good for a quarterback. When you add a all-time great wide receiver to your team, but time will tell.
All right, here. So let's move on to the AFC North. But before we do that, I would like to fix something in the tech. But while I do that, you guys are going to both talk about who in this division is the one guy you want to walk away with. So, Nick, you want to start us off?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because I would have probably said J.K. Dobbins about last week, but obviously we saw that he
Well, wait,
his.
Nick. Before it's we're talking about the
Towards-
AFC South, Nick, not the North yet. If you had to take someone,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying the
No,
AFC
no, no,
North.
no.
I'm sorry. I was half listening.
when we
Oh,
do keep
so
divisions and stuff.
I guess really the big teams that I really want to walk away with is AJ Brown. I think I disagree with JD. I definitely say I agree that Tannehill, they don't throw the ball that much, but I do think that Tannehill's a very underrated quarterback. I think if you just have like a blind curtain of just give like the statistics of each quarterback, I think he's comparable. And this is going to be a hot take, but I think he's comparable fantasy wise to Patrick Mahomes. I'll have to get those numbers to that, but I remember seeing an article where it was saying Ryan Tannehill is comparable to fantasy relevant to Patrick Mahomes, and I don't think that's too crazy to say, at least fantasy wise. I mean, in terms of actual talent wise, yes, but he runs the ball. I mean, Tannehill runs the ball, but anyway, back to AJ Brown. I think he's definitely going to take a step forward, and I think having not as many pass catchers as they did last year with tight ends, it's just going to be AJ Brown and Julio Jones are going to be the main pass catchers. So I think that he's going to look towards them, and I think that's only going to open up AJ Brown.
All right, nice. I have to concur. JD, who's the guy you're walking away with in this division? Maybe sneaky guy, maybe it's the obvious guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily like to point him out just because I'm a big fan of his. But I mean, Pittman can be really good. I mean, he's going really late, has that potential to be the number one wide receiver on their team. You go back to his college days, and I can tell you because I was a fan of him even back then. He dropped, I think, one or two catchable balls to him in his entire career at USC. We'll see how he does this season. It's kind of his second season, and hopefully, with a younger quarterback who's a little bit more of a gunslinger. Not saying that old man Rivers wasn't a gunslinger, but he looked like he was throwing his whole body into every throw he'd make last year. If Carson can stay somewhat healthy with that line in front of him, and he's not, praying to God that he's not going to get injured for another season like he had been consistently on Philly. If he can stay healthy, I mean, Pittman has he has a quarterback that can bounce back and look decent enough. And I mean, you just have to look a couple seasons ago past, and Carson Wentz was a really good quarterback at one point. So if he can stay healthy on this type of a team with the running back committee that they have, it will only alleviate the pressure. And especially with no T.Y. Hilton in front of Pittman for the first couple of weeks, he could be really good.
Nice. The guy I have to go with is kind of a curveball is Laviska Shenault. I think with Etienne going down, that opens up the short pass game for a slot like Shenault is, and he's going to get these like little passes because as a new quarterback, wants to feel comfortable, they'll go like the short little passes. I think that the volume will be there. I'm buying into a little bit of the hype, sure, but I just think he's a good fantasy value, especially in like a keeper league. You get this late round pick and you get to keep him, and a lot of these were second year receivers develop and they're just a lot better their second year. So watch out for a lot of second year receivers. We'll probably talk about a few more. We have actually a few more coming up, and we're going to definitely highlight them. Second year receivers are always worth more than their ADP. Just like we talked about Pittman's second year receiver. So yes, for sure. So yeah. All right. So let's.
I'm a little curious. You said that out of the three wide receivers from that team earlier, you said you would go with Marvin
the
Jones.
Pick though, I would say so that's the safe pick.
Okay.
So if I'm going sneaky, I'm going Laviska Shenault. So yeah,
Okay.
so we'll see. I have him in one of my leagues, but yeah. Anyway, so let's move on.
Chenault
I
or
have Chenault in one league. Yeah, Joe has them in our league together. I was kind of mad. I was kind of trying to plan.
yeah.
So
I know you've been trying. Well, you haven't traded, but you've been mentioning about
yeah, especially
trading
because it's a
for him.
keeper league. So that's kind of why I brought up Chenault too, because that keeper status too. Because as Trevor
Yeah.
Lawrence gets better, Chenault's still hanging around, you know. So yeah. All right, so we'll.
Yeah. Hopefully you already made that trade before he
Yeah,
watches
he
this
won't watch the
episode.
whole thing. I know Joe, but Joe, if you watch this whole thing, put in the comments section Chenault to Jimmy. Okay, let's see if he does.
It's okay. You didn't read his book.
I've read a lot of his story. I've read his poetry and a lot of his book, like a whole chapter. Okay, so let's move on to the AFC North, and the team we're going to start with is the Ravens. JD, how about you grab the Ravens? You haven't gone a little.
All right. So yeah, I mean, what can be said?
Dobbins,
I mean,
draft him.
if you're looking for someone who, yeah, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, grab him. If your guys are playing a fantasy league though, and whatever team drafted him made a stupid move of dropping him, I might want to pick him up and get a 15th rounder. That's what Jimmy did with Akers this past week.
I picked up Akers this week. Our keeper.
But no, what can be said though? I mean, Lamar Jackson is, I think, going to be really good this year again for fantasy wise. I don't know how great he will be as far as like an actual NFL season, but fantasy wise, he's that type of quarterback that you salivate over if you can get him on your team. He's going to run. I mean, I think 2 years ago he broke the record for quarterback rushing yards over Michael Vick for like almost a 20-year record that Vick was holding, and I think Lamar Jackson broke it. He's just a running quarterback. He's the team's number one running back at quarterback. So I mean, he's just that type of player with that type of upside that you would want him on your team if he becomes available. I might not necessarily go over some other quarterbacks, and I wouldn't. He would be someone that if he falls to you, I would pick up, but he wouldn't be someone I go out of my way for quarterback. There's other quarterbacks I think that might be slightly better, but he's still a great option just running it alone. Then they picked up Sammy Watkins in the offseason. Honestly, I'm going to say this right now. It might be a little controversial. I don't know how this guy's still in the league at this point.
Yeah. Hate you.
And he's like their number 2 wide receiver.
One though.
Yeah. This week coming up. Marquise Brown can be pretty good if you got Gus Edwards beforehand, or if you're about to draft. He might be a really good one. I mean, their next back is Justice Hill, or you can go Tyson Williams.
I think Tyson Williams won out the second job. I think they said something like that.
I was reading that he has a lot of upsides, and the coaches really do like him a lot. So he could be, if you're playing in a deep league or something, or you have a 12-man league and it's 15 or 16 rounds, he might be someone you want to keep an eye on, maybe pick up as like the last round or something, because I've been hearing really good things about him. And then tight end, they have Mark Andrews. He should be pretty good. I just question any pass catcher on the Ravens, just because, I mean, when Lamar Jackson plays, he runs the ball almost as much as he throws the ball, and so that kind of scares me. I mean, it can work out really well for them, and out of all their options, I really think Mark Andrews is by far their best catcher on the team, in all honesty. But I mean, number one, I'd go Lamar Jackson as their best player and best fantasy footballer. But I mean, Nick can tell you all about that 2 years ago when he had to go up McCaffrey and Lamar Jackson on one team.
That was an unfair
year.
That was like an asterisk next to that person who won because he had both on our team.
Right?
I mean, I totally agree with JD. I mean, Lamar Jackson is, let's be honest, he regressed from the year before, like 2 years ago. So last year he just was not the same passer.
They figured him out, maybe.
I wouldn't say that much. I mean, because it's so hard to actually guard someone. But like, honestly, like I remember watching some of the games and he just flat out missed people. Like he was overthrowing them, underthrowing, throwing the traffic. it didn't look good. So I think that we'll see, as far as like a fantasy viable quarterback, Lamar Jackson's that guy. But I also think like we could see him like Cam Newton last year numbers, where he's throwing for 96 yards, but still getting 20 points on like touchdowns and stuff like that. And but I really don't believe in his ability to throw, and I don't mean to be a hater. I just don't think. I think when you're a running quarterback, you just rely on your legs too much to get you out of situations where you have to fit balls in certain windows. I think he's gonna, have not the greatest year throwing, but a great year running. And to be honest with you, like I don't even like any of their pass catchers other than Mark Andrews. Like honestly, like Marquise Brown.
They're missing 2, and they're missing Dobbins now. They're gonna have hard.
Right. I think their guy that they drafted in the first round this last year, literally he's out. Yeah, and they really didn't even do anything in the offseason other than bring in Sammy Watkins. But even Sammy Watkins with Patrick Mahomes last year was like nothing. Yeah. They needed a number 2 wide receiver, and Sammy Watkins was not that it for them. So I just can't believe in their passing game, and I think the only person that I would take is Mark Andrews, because Mark Andrews, when him and Lamar Jackson are together, they do have a connection. I always would remember watching the games, and he was always looking for Mark Andrews above anyone else. So I think that's just kind of my take. And Gus Edwards is, he is what it is. He is, he's a north to south runner. He's not going to be this exciting, guy that's going to get you like, 25 points or whatever. He's going to get score touchdowns, but he's definitely like he's a low end running back too, and like a flex play in my eyes.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. There's not much that can be said. I think if you draft Lamar for fantasy, great. I think I love Lamar. I don't know if you guys ever watched like interviews with him, because I was making a joke because recently they came out. Some teams, JD might have heard this, said like, we figured him out. They figured it out. So he like responded to it. He goes, "Oh, cool. Hopefully, whatever, like, kind of just brushed it off, So
yeah.
How do you How do you figure it out? Yeah. He can still run, but I think he's a safe option to pick. Gus Edwards, I think he's probably. I think if you got him, awesome. But I think if now you're going to draft like this upcoming weekend, don't. I think he went up. His ADP's probably shot way overkill. People go, oh my gosh. People tend to do that thing where they're like, oh my gosh, he's going to take all the touches now and do this thing. Now, no, they're going to do a committee, okay? They're going to do something
overhype it.
Yeah, they like to overhype things. Like, we all do that. When someone goes down, we're like, the next guy is just going to be the best ever, And that could be the case. Sometimes it happens. We saw it with Mike Davis last year, did awesome. James Robinson, when they got rid of Fournette, came in. But yeah, I don't have much faith in this offense. I wouldn't want any much of this offense. I think Mark Andrews goes a little bit early for me. If I don't get one of the big 3 tight ends, or maybe like Hawkinson or Pitts, I'd probably just not even worry about tight end. So yeah, like I would just like not worry about Mark Andrews. I think he's gonna do good, but I think his ADP is probably a little high. I want to say he's going like 5th, 6th round. That's too high for me personally. But like if you won't be a fool to take a shot at it, like if you are, but you will be a fool to take Mahomes at the 3rd round still. But Mahomes. But yes.
One thing I'll say is I agree with Jimmy to that. The one thing that I learned last year, if you wait too long on a tight end, it can really, where I was starting like Evan Ingram for the last 5 or 6 weeks, and like if anyone knows, that guy is like the most just inconsistent. I feel like he doesn't even try on some plays. Like you can find, and so that's why if you can get a tight end that will be consistent early enough on, you're definitely not a fool. Like you would be a fool if you picked up a Patrick Mahomes in the 3rd round.
I just think it's a fool thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
someone kept him.
In 2 of our leagues, right? Did Dallas keep him in the 3rd round?
Did someone picked him? Yeah, Dallas kept him in the 3rd round. Think about the freaking receivers that go in the 3rd round, people. There's such great talent in the 3rd round. Oh my gosh.
That also being said, just to let you guys know, Gus Edwards right now is currently ranked at 69.
Nice.
For ADP. So I'm just saying, you can't pass up on a better 69.
Yeah. Oh, Ravens defense, get him. Tucker, get him. He's the most accurate kicker in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he missed an easy one though to like lose because he had like consecutive extra points or something like that. I don't know if you guys remember. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's like nothing.
So real quick, last thing I'm gonna say, I agree with Nick again on the passing of Lamar Jackson. What I always like to say is if you took away their legs, would they still be an NFL quarterback? And the Lamar Jackson, I don't even know, would be. He might be a college quarterback if you took away those legs. Maybe on like a small end Division I team. But I mean, what makes him so special is the fact that he can run out the pocket and then pulls defenses away from and then can hit someone on the run. But like Nick's saying, if he sat in the pocket and threw that ball, I can't tell you how many times he'll probably overthrow someone or underthrow or just miss wide on someone. He's just consistently he can hit a. He's one of those quarterbacks that will pull the defense to have to do a spy on him, or will roll to the outside and pull the defense out so he can hit someone open.
Yeah. All right. So, Nick, I think I want you to take this next team because I think you actually have the most invested in our two fantasy leagues in the Bengals. So, and this is an interesting team. I think it's very extremely fantasy relevant team. So, Nick, what do you have to say about the Bengals?
Yeah.
Give us the rundown.
So, I mean, the Bengals have a love-hate with. I mean, we talked about like the Jets, just kind of like there was like a curse that was just hovering over that team, a dark cloud. They just like every decision they made was just like the wrong one, and we saw that continue. I'm gonna say this. I will say this. We saw that continue when they chose Jamar Chase over someone that can literally protect their quarterback who went out like off last year. He went off. Okay, for a rookie quarterback, like he was doing amazing.
Yep.
But of course, the Bengals, the dark cloud still follows them. They pick a wide receiver when they have two very, very, very good wide receivers in T. Higgins and
Tyler Boyd.
My goodness, why am I Tyler Boyd, who is my Boyd?
Apparently not.
But,
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I know. I have him. I just was drawing a blank. You know, it's a long day. Anyway, I just think the Bengals just really made a mistake in drafting Jamar Chase, and it's not anything to do against Jamar Chase. It's more so with the need of the team. It's the need of the team, you know? I mean, you literally have your quarterback who played so well last year and, you know, tears his ACL. What's like the one thing you think you should do, right? You think you want to go protect him and make sure, hey, don't run, you know, stay in the pocket and throw. Now we're in a situation that we were last year where the offensive line's not that great. They think it's going to be better. We'll see. I mean, but I think they have a good offense. I mean, last year I think they were one of the few teams that you really wanted like a piece or a stake in that offense, just because they're getting blown out, so they needed to like throw to get back into the game. And I think a team that's comparable to them was the Houston Texans because they were in the same way. They just had a horrible defense. But I think really they have top to bottom really good offensive players and a lot of offensive pieces. I mean, Mixon, I think we've been saying this for years that Mixon's going to do well this year, and he never has. But, I mean, I'm going to say it's insanity. Am I right? But I think he'll do well. I love their pass catchers. I mean, Tyler Boyd, awesome. T. Higgins, who was so great last year, also so underrated. I think he and Justin Jefferson, had Joe Burrow not go out, probably would have been on the same level as Justin Jefferson. Jamar Chase is only going to, you know, add to how great that wide receiving core is. So with that being said, I think that there's really no wrong answer to pick with them.
Yeah. All right. So I'll comment a little bit on the Bengals. I think the Bengals. Let's get Juju. Juju has something to say about the Bengals. The Bengals are gonna bangle. You know, just like the Browns are gonna brown. Like, come on. Like, what is that draft pick? We see Jamar Chase struggling. I think both those other two receivers you'd want before Jamar Chase personally. Unless you're in a keeper league, then I think Jamar Chase might be a good viable thing. But I think Tyler Boyd is going to get his touches. He's the slot, and he's going to get his touches. So, and I think you can almost take anyone on that team. I think you could take Burrow. I don't know if I'd want to start him week 1, but I think he will be fantasy viable within a few weeks. We'll get a kind of a gauge on things.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Here comes Mixon again. All right. I had him a couple of years ago, and he just looks so delicious right now. He's served to us on a golden silver platter, just ready for us to delight in, because now he has no Giovanni Bernard, and he's just gonna have that entire offense to himself, that backfield. Talk about a guy who's like the opposite of a Jonathan Taylor. He has that offense to himself. So, yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about the Bengals. JD, what are your thoughts?
So yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit of a believer in the Bengals. I mean, I have two of their players in our league. I have Jamar Chase. Not for this year, maybe. He's just one of those again rookies. He was picked really early in the first round, and you probably coaches, but you ask like anyone who watched the watched
I'm gonna stop you real quick.
LSU years ago.
JD,
And
stop for a second because I'm getting really
Yeah.
bad audio.
Yeah, I'm losing JD. I have technical problems with JD here, so I don't know what's going on. It's something with Skype. It's all part of the
is it
the growing pains. I think it's your internet keeps cutting
the
Yeah,
out.
audio problem?
It's your internet, dude. But I'll continue what JD was saying. Bengals, good offense, bad defense, get them. That's what you're saying, right, dude?
Basically, yeah. I mean, I was just buying into the Jamar Chase for the next year because Jamar Chase is. I mean, if you watch the LSU games, he was the better of the wide receivers between him and Justin Jefferson. He's going way too high for basically what they're saying about him right now, which is that he can't even catch a ball. He can't even. I mean, good. The one thing I'll say is you can get him because he probably can't even catch COVID. He can't catch anything.
That was a good one.
So yeah, I mean, that being said, you can go with either of the Joes and you'll do well. Joe Burrow, I think, is going to be really good again this year. That's why I picked him as my second quarterback. Running back Joe Mixon, I think will have a bounce back season. The two previous seasons before this season, he had over 1,000 yards rushing, and I mean, you look at their backups at running back. There's no one really that impressive that they're going to be like, oh, let's have him share the carry. I mean, their backup is they don't even have one basically at this point. So I mean, Joe Mixon, if he can stay healthy, he could be really good. Again, the biggest question mark ever is what this front office is doing. You see that, I mean. You can go back, what is it, like almost 10 years, 10 years from now, and forced his way out of this team, was going to either retire or leave because he was had enough. They were constantly getting hit, injured, out for seasons, and he was still doing decent up until then, but just couldn't take it anymore. So what do? They get, the Red Rocket or whatever his nickname is. Andy Dalton. And I mean, he had a pretty good season over there. I mean, or career over at the Bengals. But again, no line, nothing to protect him. And so what did they do? They get a rookie quarterback, potentially once in a generation type quarterback again too. I shouldn't say once, but like definitely a franchise quarterback at the very least. And they still fail to protect their quarterbacks. It's mind-boggling that you can go this long and not protect your quarterbacks.
Yeah, they just need to invest in offensive line. We'll see if their offensive line is any better, but I mean, I think they really, really just made a bad decision. But that's enough with the loser Bengals. I love them. But real quick question: who do you take? Who's your number one wide receiver on that team, Jimmy?
T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins is going to go off.
Higgins?
Safest Tyler Boyd. T. Higgins, I think, is going to have another. People forget how good he was. He was up there with Justin Jefferson. Me and Nick were even talking about trading them for each other or something like that. Because that's how just close they were doing week to week, and then Burrow went down, and that was with a rookie quarterback. So I think T. Higgins is getting undervalued, and I think he will be a fantasy stud, and I'd want him on teams. And that's also a feeling that I didn't feel like until recently too, So yeah, what about you, JD?
I mean, it would be 1A, 1B for me, but I might favor Boyd, but T. Higgins is. Like you guys are saying, it's 1A, 1B. Like you could honestly, week in, week out, you can interchange them. And they're the type of offense. I mean, Joe Burrow was like number 2 or 3 in passing yards when he got injured. So that's one of those teams that has the chance to pass the ball around, and everyone's kind of going to get their numbers if he can stay healthy, that is.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on here. I'll take the Browns. The Browns, I hate Baker Mayfield. I'm just going to put that out there. And I hate Baker Mayfield because I drafted OBJ last year. And for some reason, I think the reason is a psychological reason. Like, he felt like he had the need to throw to OBJ, so he'd force it. For some reason, Baker Mayfield got better when OBJ went down. That's weird. But Baker Mayfield, you won't be having him in any league unless you have like a 2-quarterback league, one of those type of leagues. But I just wanted to comment that. Quit giving him so many commercials. Baker, no, he's
not that good.
He seems like a nice guy. He seems like a nice guy, but I'm not buying into the Baker Mayfieldness. They're like talking about like extending him. If he was as good as kind of the Browns fans like to say he's as good, he would have his contract now, but they don't want to give him that. But I don't know why I'm going on a Baker Mayfield rant. This just felt like the time and place, but maybe it's not. maybe it's not. But anyways, for everyone else on this team, specifically the running backs, Nick Chubb. Draft that guy. That guy's a stud. They're the top offensive line, and he's shown that he can be fantasy relevant with a Kareem Hunt behind him. This is a run-first team. This is a beautiful run-first team. If you got Nick Chubb, congratulations. I think Nick Chubb is going to be worth it for you. And like in any league, Nick Chubb's going to be solid as long as he doesn't get hurt. We even saw with Kareem Hunt, so I can move on to Kareem Hunt now. Kareem Hunt was, I think, almost equally fantasy relevant when Nick Chubb was there. Everyone was saying when Nick Chubb went down for a few weeks, Kareem Hunt's the number one. He's the top 5 running back. We never really saw that from him. He did, but just as good pretty much when Nick Chubb was there. So this is a true dual threat running back combo. I think Kareem Hunt, though, sits as a low-end RB2 flex. I would never even want Kareem Hunt, though, as my RB2, but he is someone I would store away. I even drafted him in one league, but I did trade him away. But I think Nick drafted him in another league. So I just think Kareem Hunt is a safe guy to put on your bench because they are a run-first team, and he can win you playoff games. Just asked one of our friends who was during the famous Monday Night Football Ravens-Browns game when Kareem Hunt all of a sudden went off at the end, and the Browns caught up, and then that whole mess of a game. But that's that knocks someone out of the playoffs. But with wide receivers, OBJ, he's going very, very low after that ACL tear. Now, I think because he's going extremely low, I think it might be a steal. I think OBJ is worth a weekly flex play. I think he's a mid-range or wide receiver 2, maybe, hopefully. Hopefully Baker Mayfield's gotten better, and I'll come on here and be like, I love Baker Mayfield now. I'm a very simple man. All you got to do is make my guys look good, and I'll like you. Yeah,
be good.
Just be good, dude. Like E.T. said it best, dude. Be good. That's all. I don't think he was talking about something different, but Jarvis Landry, he was really good when OBJ went down. Now I don't know if he'll be any good with OBJ there, so he's maybe someone to stash away. I believe their tight end Austin Hooper. I think he'll be fantasy relevant because like all tight ends at the bottom, when you start to scrape like the bottom of the ice cream, whatever it is, the ice cream holder. Yeah, the ice cream, whatever, you're at the bottom scraping that up. I think Austin Hooper, though, is a viable fantasy option as he will get his targets. Baker Mayfield, maybe you put him away during certain matchups. He's a streaming quarterback at the most for me. If you're going in there starting Baker Mayfield, you might end up with negative points. Just ask those people who did it a couple of years ago. Their defense is looking solid, so draft that defense.
Good.
They're going really high in a lot of drafts. Like when it comes to defense, they're going late rounds, but high amongst the defenses. So they're a defense to watch for. I love this. I love the Browns' offense. I think they have a really good offense, which is ironic because I just talked crap about Baker Mayfield. I think he's a
run offense.
It is a run offense first, but I think even though all they said, I think there's some fantasy viable receivers you can maybe put, but not like what first options. It's Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and then maybe the receivers sprinkled in. But yeah, so what do you guys have to say about the Browns?
I mean, what can be said? I mean, I actually really do agree. I was actually going to ask you guys what you guys' opinion of their defenses, because, I mean, we all know they picked up Jadeveon Clowney. They have John Johnson at safety. I mean, Myles Garrett is probably a top 5 defensive player when he's not bashing in people's heads, that is.
Oh, my God. Rest in peace, Mason Crosby. That was the end of his career. No, I was kidding. It's like so back.
No, I'm talking about Mason.
Not Rudolph. Mason Rudolph, sorry. Not the kicker, not Mason Crosby, the kicker for Green Bay.
Saw that meme where his head was like dented in.
Hey, if you haven't seen that, go look that up.
I agree. Baker Mayfield, if he has a really good matchup for that week, maybe you pick him up, play him that week, especially if you're like have a bye that week or something like that. But besides that, I wouldn't have him our second quarterback on my team. He's just so inconsistent. Like Jimmy was saying, I mean, 2 years ago, I can't tell you how many memes I saw or how many posts I saw of people losing their week because they didn't just take him out and just quarterback start for them. They would have not started a quarterback. They would have won that week, but because they started him and he got point negative whatever, they lost that week. I could not imagine. And just Baker Mayfield, the Browns think he's like the second coming of Jesus, and like he's just not.
Yeah,
he's just not. Like Jimmy said, if the Browns truly believed in him, he would have that contract extension. Yeah. When it comes to running backs, we all saw how they did last year. It always scares me when you have two potential Pro Bowl talent running backs. But they made it work last year, and if you feel comfortable enough having that 1-2 punch, I mean, you can grab one of them. Like Jimmy said, Kareem Hunt would be more, for me, probably like a flex than he would be a running back 2. I just don't like a running back 2 that isn't technically even listed as a starter on the team.
12-team leagues probably the most.
But I mean, like Jimmy also said, I mean, it was I think like week 14 or 15 last season, Kareem Hunt went off and had like 30 points, and our friend in our league won, and crazy last second like touchdown catch or whatever like that, run in the end zone. Odell, I've been hearing that Odell and Baker have been working on their chemistry a lot, and so I've been hearing good things about it. But yeah, everyone can say that, but until it's like proven to me, I worry about that because, like Jimmy said, Baker almost looks better without his number one wide receiver on his team. I'm a big believer in Jarvis Landry. I mean, you can look at him all the way back at the Dolphins, and he was a good wide receiver then. I remember when the Browns traded for him, everyone was freaking out because that's two great wide receivers on one team. Now, it hasn't produced yet, but Jarvis Landry, I'm a big believer in. I mean, I took him in our league as well. So I'm a big believer that I think he, on this team, has the better chemistry and is showing to be the better. I don't think he's the better wide receiver, but I think he's the better wide receiver for this team.
Sure. Yeah, I think you guys really nailed it. I mean, we're a run-first team. You know, if you can get in one of the running backs, I honestly feel like that's what I would suggest, really. They're pass catchers, yeah. I mean, does Baker get better this year? We'll see. I mean, he was hot or cold, you know, all of last year. Like, there'd be games that he would do well. I think, like, against the Cowboys, like, he did really well. And I think even Odell had a great game. I remember Jimmy didn't start him. So.
Anyone does good against the Cowboys.
Yeah, right. So it's definitely streamer play. But, I mean, that's another thing to add just here. Once the line is really good. And you see offensive line equals good offense. I'll leave that there. Bengals.
That's for you. All right. So let's move on to the last team here of the day. And I think they belong to JD. Yeah, JD, how about you close this out with the Steelers?
Okay. I'll start it off. I think Big Ben is getting a lot of hate. I wouldn't draft him on my team, but I think he's getting a lot of hate. And we even kind of talked about it last year. Yeah, he started off that horrible playoff game against the Browns horribly. Like, what did they had like 4 first quarter touchdowns the Browns did, and he had like 2 or 3 turnovers in just the first quarter alone. But we saw them fight back. I mean, they were less than a touchdown away, and they made I think they kicked it when they should have gone for it or something like that, and that kind of cost them the game. But I mean, I think Ben, I think this will be his last year, but I think he's still criminally underrated, to the point where I don't think that I wouldn't want a piece of that wide receiver. Like, I want a piece of that wide receiver combo. I think Deontay Johnson has the biggest upside. He has the most drops, but I think he is the biggest. I think he, when he is on that day and when he can catch the football, we saw, I think he had like at least 4 games of over 20 points last season. He's just one of those, and that's with him missing games because of injuries and all that too. So I think he's a really good upside. Juju, even though he didn't even catch that many, I can't tell you how many times I got so mad because he scored like 2 touchdowns on me and I lost to him that 1 week. Chase Claypool has huge upside as a second year. Just the wide receiver trio over there is a really good trio. Out of all 3 of them, I wouldn't want Juju.
Yeah.
But I still drafted Juju, so I'm a big believer in that
and his
passing
jersey
threat.
and that Trojan.
Yeah, that Trojan Nation, man. I gotta support the Trojans. But
Trojan Nation.
That being said, I am also a big believer in Najee Harris. I believe that they drafted him in that first round, and they're kind of giving him the keys to the bus there. They're saying, you know what, like, they've never been a running back by committee team, and I don't think they're going to start with Snell as the backup and Harris as number one. I think it's going to be a clear Najee Harris starting and running for them. The biggest question for them, and it's always kind of been there, is can their offensive line produce and stay healthy? Last year they weren't staying healthy, and even when they were healthy, they weren't doing that well. So I think that's their biggest worry. But honestly, I mean, Eric Ebron, I wouldn't probably get as a tight end. If you're really hurting at tight end, maybe a week or two you can pick him up, and depending on the matchup. But for the most part, I wouldn't. I'm not a big believer in their tight ends as much as I am a believer in their 3 wide receivers and their running back, I guess.
Yeah.
Nick, what are your thoughts?
I'm real excited to see Najee. I'm excited. I think everyone saw when in Alabama, he just like totally cleared someone. Everyone in fantasy was just like, "Ooh, I want him. I want him." He's definitely someone that I'm excited to see play. I agree with JD. Offensive line, it's a very much a question mark, but I still think he's a good enough running back to, still catch balls out of the backfield and be that every down guy that they need him to be. But I mean, really, JD nailed it. I mean, I prefer Mapletron. Claypool over the best of all those receivers personally, and I think it's just because he's equipped with his physical. He's so tall, and I think that he's really going to take a step forward this year too.
Yeah. I have to say that I agree that I think Claypool has the most upside of all of them. I think he's a second-year guy, and he's just an awesome monster, Why I lean towards Deontay Johnson is I think Deontay Johnson's the safer option. He's going to get the targets. Claypool, I think, is going to maybe compete. I don't know who's going to be the wide receiver 3. I don't know what the depth chart looks like. I'd have to look it up. But they also have, is it Washington? Is it James Washington?
James
Washington comes in for a lot of plays, so there is going to be one of these receivers that's going to come out. So this is like a 3.5-headed monster, because... But so I don't know who's going to get all the targets. So I think Deontay Johnson will get the most targets, and I think it's between Juju and Claypool. They just signed Juju, so I tend to believe they don't necessarily want to take Juju out if he's performing well. And we'll see if he's not dancing on people's logos. It'll be better Juju for him. Wow, gosh, these puns all day. Goodness gracious.
Jeez, dude. Hey, stay hot.
One thing I'll say about that, though, Juju signed a 1-year contract with them, massively undersold just because he wanted to stay with the team. I tend to believe that means, for me, it feels like the Steelers are ready to move on from him, but he took a big pay cut just to stay with them. I think he went like $10 million under his market value just to kind of stay with them, and he went for a 1-year deal. So it can be hit or miss because I feel like that's Juju being like, I want to stay with the team. I also want to prove that I'm a better wide receiver than what I showed that year before.
Yeah.
But at the same point, the ball can only be passed so many times, and I feel like, honestly, he might be their third best option come into the season.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with that either. I'll just comment real quick because I want to comment on this. Najee Harris is just going to be a stud. He could possibly be a league winner. I wouldn't be surprised for a lot of people. I think he will next year be going in the first round, like mid-first round. I wouldn't be surprised at all just because of the volume he's going to receive. And I think they'll get better offensive line next year. I think he is going to take some time, though, to come into his own, like all rookies do. So he's not going to come out of the gate just like destroying. But I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, if someone who's different, but I believe Najee Harris was originally a wide receiver. And as us fantasy owners in a PPR league, we're in half PPR or full whatever. If you're in full PPR, when you hear that your running back used to be a wide receiver, you're just like salivating at that. And this 3-down bell cow back is going to be is a wide receiver. He's going to get it catches. And when those dump offs, when Big Ben can't move, he's not going to move. You know, but he can shake some guys off him because he's Big Ben. But when he needs to get out of the pocket, he's going to throw it out of the pocket right to Najee Harris, and Najee Harris is going to run for a bunch of yards. We saw it in preseason too. We saw him run over the middle. We didn't see the dump off, but we did see Najee run over the middle and get targeted for a little short pass, and he ran for like 30, 40 yards. Najee Harris, guy to watch. All right, guys, before we close out here, though, one guy from this league, this division, who you're taking. Who's the guy? Who's your guy? Maybe it's the obvious guy, like I said, or maybe it's the guy not so obvious. JD, you want to start us off this time?
Yeah, I'll start us off. I mean, honestly, I'm probably a little bit. I have a little bit of favoritism, but it's because I picked him up. But I would honestly go with Najee. If he can have that offensive line stay healthy, if they can prove at all. Like Jimmy's saying, he was a monster even at Alabama, and I think he's gonna show what he really can when he plays for Pittsburgh. I think he's, like you said, I think he might be eventually a first rounder next year in fantasy. So hopefully we'll see how he does.
Yeah. Nick, what about you?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm also biased for this one. T. Higgins. T. Higgins is my boy, man. T. Higgins is my boy. I just love him. I think he's going to also take a step forward. I think he was a beast last year. Continue to do beast things, even with a 3-headed monster at the wide receiver position. So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to go with my boy I drafted in 2 leagues, Deontay Johnson. I think he's due to explode. If he can freaking catch the ball like he's supposed to do as a wide receiver, I believe he had like 140 freaking targets and he caught like 100 and like 5 or something like that, around that. If he catches these targets that he's getting, he's going to blow up. But also Claypool's that sneaky one that could easily overtake him. I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking a few months from now saying Claypool overtook him. I'm not going to be surprised, and I won't be necessarily mad. I won't be happy, but I'll be like, I'm not surprised because I knew it the draft risk coming in. But yeah, so, well, sorry for the technical difficulties today, guys, but hopefully next time we can fix out the kinks. But thank you for watching this episode of the Fantasy Football Bros. Make sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Click that bell so you're notified when we drop the next episode. Hopefully next episode, we're going to get into a mock draft. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of this. It's going to be more lackadaisical. We went down every team, more formal. Now we're going to get more cash on you, We're going to put on our cashmere sweaters and have a good time. So thanks you guys, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for watching the Fantasy Football Bros podcast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.